I'm here with Jim Kwik. Jim Kwik just stepped off the main stage here at Silicon Slopes Summit. Jim, we appreciate you coming out. Just as a quick introduction, I'm Ryan Boswell, Senior Director of Growth here at Silicon Slopes. Jim, why don't you take a second and just introduce yourself to those that are watching a replay of this and let us know a little bit about you.
Absolutely, Ryan. So my name is Jim Kwik of Kwik Learning, and I help people to learn quickly. Kwik really is my last name. I didn't change it to do what I do. It's my 30th year as a brain coach. You know, you go to a personal trainer and they make your muscles faster and stronger, more flexible, more agile, more energy. Well, I want your mental muscles to be sharper. I want your memory to be better. I want your focus, your brain to be energized. And so I help people to handle things like distraction, forgetfulness, brain fog, so they could have more productivity, performance, peace, and prosperity.
I know in the intro to your podcast, in the KwikBrain podcast, correct?
Yes.
One of the first things you talk about is your background and your experience. Your founding story is absolutely incredible. What's one thing that you wish people would be able to take away from your founding story and apply into their lives? So
my origin story was when people see me on stage, I do sometimes these mental feats where I'll memorize a room full of people's names or random numbers or words that they do challenge me with. But my inspiration really was my desperation. I had a traumatic brain injury when I was a child. I was labeled by various people as broken. And my message to everybody is that adversity can be an advantage, that through struggle, we get strength, that through challenges, we have change. And wherever people are on their journey in an area of their life, limits are not always real. You know, it has to do with transcending, ending the trance, ending this massive gnosis, that somehow we're broken or, you know, our intelligence is fixed like our shoe size. And we've learned more about in the past 10 years about our brain than the previous 1,000 years combined. And what we find is we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities. And so whoever's listening, you know, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an educator, you're a founder, you know, wherever you are in your journey, that there's a version of ourselves that's patiently waiting. And the goal is we show up every single day until we're introduced. And I think one of the best ways of getting there is really to study. I want people to my message to people is I want to give hope and help to those who are told they were limited. You know, I want to show people that they could be more, have more, share more, do more.
And I think that one of the great things you said on main stage today was practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes progress.
It does. It really does.
I can imagine over the last 30 years of being a brain coach, you've had the opportunity to help a lot of people. Are there any experiences that maybe you'd be willing to share that stand out specifically of someone that maybe came to you or that you were able to help through your book, through your podcast, through your coaching program? Is there an experience that comes to mind that you could share with us?
I could tell you the first person I ever helped after I learned this 30 years ago, I couldn't help but help other people, right? Because I don't want people to struggle and suffer the way I did. And I started tutoring. And one of my very first students, she was a college freshman. She read 30 books in 30 days. Wow. Not skim or scan. She really went deep. And I wanted to find out not how. I know how because I taught her, but I want to know why. I always want to know what's the difference. And some people, common sense is not often common practice. A lot of people know what to do, but they're not doing what they know. And I found out that her reason was her mother was dying of terminal cancer. Doctors gave her mom just 2 months to live, just 60 days. And the books she was reading were books to save her mom's life. And I wish her luck and prayers. 6 months goes by. I get a call from this young lady and she's crying profusely. And when she stops, I realize they're tears of joy that her mother not only survived, but is really getting better. Doctors don't know how or why. They were calling it a miracle. But her mother attributed 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books. Wow. And in that moment, I realized that if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And it's a superpower we all have. There weren't a lot of classes on how to learn these things.
Yeah. So you started 30 years ago as a tutor.
Yeah.
How did your program, the things that I can imagine in your KwikBrain, there's a million things running through and you're able to help a lot of people. How over the years have you developed what you do into a simple, concise format? And how have you developed something that helps so many people?
So our mission is to build better, brighter brains. You know, $1 billion, it sounds nice, but 1 billion brains coming online, you know, at that
sounds a lot better.
Yeah, because those are the brains that are going to go out there and they're going to create businesses and solve problems, move the economy, maybe even solve some of the world challenges that we're facing. And so that's really exciting to me. We put our programs and our trainings, we turn them into curriculum and we offer them online. So we have students in every country in the world, 195 nations. My book, Limitless, we're very proud. It was a #1 Wall Street Journal, instant New York Times bestseller. It's been translated in 30 plus languages around the globe. Our podcast is available on every podcast platform. It's one of the top education shows. No sponsors. It's very, very simple. We want to put it out there, over 300 episodes. And we want to democratize this and get this out to the world. I believe that we live in the millennium of the mind today. It's not like we're paid for our brute strength. Today, it's our brain strength. It's not our muscle power like it was years ago. Today, it's our mind power. And our ability to learn quickly is the most incredible competitive advantage that we have.
Yeah, that's incredible. One of the things, just as you were mentioning how you've developed your curriculum, one of the things that popped in my mind was just the struggle that we've had in the last couple of years of work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I like to reverse that and call it a life-work balance, because I think life often comes before work. I don't think that defines who we are. So what would you recommend, to the people that are watching back and listening to this? Yeah. Obviously, our audience is very busy. We live in a busy world. How would you recommend people find a life-work balance by optimizing their brain performance?
It's been my experience. We're getting a lot of feedback, especially the past couple of years, that people feel exhausted. They feel burnt out mentally and emotionally. Mental health has to be a priority. I think burnout comes from, it's not always because we're doing too much. There's an illusion that's the case, but burnout is not always doing too much. Sometimes we feel burnt out because we're doing too little of the things that make us feel alive or come alive. And, it's not just about managing our time. We all have 24 hours in a day. That's the only thing that's equal. Everybody has different incomes, education, network, but we all have, a certain amount of time in the day. Everybody is equal. And it's not about time management. For me, it's always been about mind management and priority management. Meaning, for priority management, the most important thing is to keep the most important things the most important things. The most important thing is to keep the most important things the most important things. And balance is interesting because words carry weight in our nervous system. And balance, I used to use the word balance a lot. And then I looked it up and I didn't realize it felt stressful. Like balance is like on a balance beam. If you look at the dictionary, it says equal weights of, and it's kind of like this tightrope walk where you're trying to keep everything equal. And I switched the word from balance recently to harmony, meaning that I don't want to spend an equal amount of time in the gym as I do with my family, as I do, on the computer. Harmony is like a symphony, an orchestra that is creating an art, right? And not every instrument or musician has an equal amount of time, but they come together and they create this beautiful art, and music. And so I'm looking for creating more harmony in my life. And I think it's important, as Dr. Stephen Covey talks about, putting first things first, getting really good at the things that matter.
Well, and I think an important thing to highlight there is, in order to put first things first, you have to know what the important things are so that you can keep them important. And I think that's one of the challenges that we face in the world that we live in, is we just have so much going on that task management and priority management isn't something that's necessarily taught or ingrained in us. We have to learn and develop that skill for ourselves. So have you noticed a change in, I would call it personal leadership, because some people may not necessarily be leaders in an organization or in a group setting. Do you feel like you've noticed, as you've helped people develop their mindset, help people optimize for brain performance, that you've noticed people see a change in their ability to be great leaders?
Without a doubt. I think learning and leadership go hand in hand. When people see photographs of me on social media with Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Oprah, Bill Gates, these individuals, people ask how you connected, and we bonded over learning. We bonded over books. You read to succeed. If somebody has decades of experience and they put it into a book, and you can sit down and read that book in a handful of days, you could download decades into days, which is an incredible advantage. And so I think leadership is based on personal responsibility and personal growth and self-management. And when I say that word responsibility, I got to introduce two of my modern day superheroes together a few years ago. It was Richard Branson and Stan Lee, right? The creator of all these superheroes. They wanted to meet each other. So we go to dinner. I go to pick up Stan, and I had to ask him. I was like, Stan, I'm a big superhero fan. I want to know, you created Avengers, X-Men, all these. Who's your favorite? And he says, Jim, my favorite is Iron Man. And he says, Jim, who's your favorite? And he had this, I posted this on Instagram. He had a big Spider-Man tie. And I said, Spider-Man. And without a pause, in his iconic voice, he goes, with great power comes great responsibility. And I had a traumatic brain injury when I was a child. And I tend to flip words around even when I read and I hear. And I said, you're right, Stan, with great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When we take responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better. And I think leadership starts with personal responsibility, personal alignment, integrity. I read this quote on recently saying, integrity is measured by the distance between someone's lips and their life. And I feel like when we take respect, like if I could give my younger self advice, like that 10-year-old self that was going through all these challenges, I would say you're enough, but I would always say you are 100% responsible for your life, good, bad, or indifferent. There's a quote in Limitless that says, life is the C between B and D. Life is C between B and D. B is birth, D is death, life, C is choice. We always have this, we're the sum total of all the choices we've made up to this point. And I believe these difficult times, they could diminish us. These difficult times can distract us, or these difficult times can develop us. We ultimately decide.
One thing I'd like to just hone in on just a little bit, I'd like to refine that just a little bit more and ask you kind of a deeper question. As you had that traumatic brain injury as a child, how did you not let that define you? I know that a lot of people that struggle with mental health, for example, often see that as a debilitation or something that holds them back from becoming the best version of themselves. So how did you change that paradigm, shift it around, and how were you able to use that platform and the things you learned to go and help other people?
So I had a few brain injuries before the age of 12. And I think, so my challenge was learning throughout my childhood till I was 18, till I learned these methods and started doing research on the human brain, adult learning theory, multiple intelligence theory. I realized that it's not how smart we are, it's how are we smart. But along that journey, I realized that my two biggest challenges were learning, because learning was such a challenge. Public speaking was my other challenge, because my superpower, talking about superheroes growing up, was being invisible. I didn't want the spotlight because I never knew the answer. I couldn't read for 3 or 4 years after my accident. I would shrink down, sit behind the tall kid in class because I was always so afraid I'd be called on, and I never was be able to show up. And life has a sense of humor, because my two biggest challenges were learning and public speaking. And as an adult, what do I do every day of my life is public speak on this thing called learning. But we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress. We don't hear a lot about the other side of it, which is called post-traumatic growth. That's where we go through severe difficulty that we wouldn't wish upon anybody. And yet some people who are listening could identify with this, maybe, that you wouldn't change it for yourself, that what you went through, that you found something, there was a gift in it. You found a purpose, you found a meaning, you found a mission, you found something, a trait that was undefined before, and you got clarity on that thing. And so I would say if somebody's struggling right now, like I was, part of self-care is self-love. It's like looking in the mirror and falling in love with the person that's been through so much, but is still standing. When I was going through my challenges, my parents immigrated here. They didn't have any money. We lived back at a laundromat that my mom worked at. We didn't have the education or connections, but it's not about external resources. I think it's about the resources that we have inside of us, and be able to harness those things. When I was so shy and insecure, I started asking myself questions like, I would watch people, right? Because I was, why is this person so, so smart, or why is this person so successful and everything? And I started asking these questions like, how do I fix this? Or how do I make things better? And when you ask your questions, you get new answers. And so, I was very blessed. Even my parents, they're not the most spiritual or the most entrepreneur, and they're not the wealthiest or healthiest. They've never had a green juice or done yoga or meditate. But I was lucky in that they were good people. They worked hard. They were very, very kind. And anything good that's ever come out of me, I attribute to them. I think I was very blessed that way. Anything that's ever fallen short, I own, and I'm responsible for that.
I think there's 3 really important things that you highlighted there, which is 1, the law of opposition, the necessity for if there's stress or if there's a decline in growth, there also has to be growth on the flip side. And I think that's really important for people that seem to be struggling with self-worth or personal development issues. And I think that's the other important thing here, is that personal development is a personal journey, and brain development is, no one else can develop our brains for each other, right?
Right.
And I think the great thing that you highlighted is that it's important to have great people that surround you. And your parents may not have been the most entrepreneurial, or they may not have been the most spiritual, but they were good people. Yeah. And I think, kind of a segue into our last question is, what are those things that impact, that may not be a direct impact on brain performance or something out of your book that may impact the overall development, something related to sleep or something related to eating habits? What's something that also aids in that development?
Yeah. I lost my grandmother, my parents were always working so many different jobs to keep things going. And so I was raised by my grandmother who also passed of Alzheimer's. That's why I'm so passionate about brain health. But I realized that, our work is endorsed by the Cleveland Clinic Center for Brain Health, the top Alzheimer's researcher out of Harvard. And we know that about 1/3 of our brain performance is predetermined by genetics and biology, but 2/3 is in our control. So there's certain things that we have autonomy and agency over. So everything from the foods we eat, there's, what we eat matters, especially for our gray matter. There's certain foods that are very neuroprotective, like avocados, blueberries. I like to call them brain berries, right? Staying hydrated, green leafy vegetables, walnuts, amazing for the brain. Vitamin E is very neuroprotective. Dark chocolate is great for your brain. Certainly also our self-talk. I believe your brain is like this supercomputer and our self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I have a horrible memory, or I'm not good at remembering names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you're programming your computer not to. So our self-talk. I think exercise is one of the most important things people could do for brain health. When you're more physically active, as your body moves, your brain grooves. You create brain-derived neurotropic factors, which is like fertilizer. It's like miracle grow for your brain. So make sure you move every day. I think also a positive peer group is so important. Events like this is so important to be around people because sometimes being an entrepreneur or founder or creator, it could be a lonely process. And connecting with people, who we spend time with is who we become. We start marrying the people around us, their words, their actions, their thoughts, their character, their habits. And so they say if you're around 9 broke people, be careful because you might be number 10. And then finally, the two last ones I would say, new learnings, always be learning. It's the most important thing to create neuroplasticity. Work out your brain as you would work out your body each day. And then, as you mentioned, sleep. When we don't sleep, how's our focus the next day? How's our memory? How's our ability to solve problems? How's our mental endurance? And we talk a lot about it in the book. I have a whole chapter dedicated. We've done 24 episodes on how to optimize your sleep, because you could always be reaching, but you also have to reach, but you have to rest, right? You're climbing a mountain, you stretch, but you have to stabilize, and replenish. So we could do anything, but we can't do everything at once. And sometimes we have to slow down to be able to speed up.
Yeah, that's great. I believe the topics about brain foods, about sleep optimization, I believe those are some of the first episodes on your podcast, the KwikBrain podcast, right?
Good memory.
I think those all fall in between the first 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, very, very good memory. Yeah, people can find the podcast anywhere. Just search my name, Jim Kwik. You just have to spell it Kwik. And we're very, very, very proud. We're looking to create an army of brain enthusiasts, who are going to go out there. And my message for people is I want people to know their brain. I want them to trust their brain. I want them to love their brain. And most importantly, I want people to use their brain. If you're watching this on video, I always wear a brain on my shirt. In photographs, I always point to my brain because what we see, we take care of. You see your clothes, you see your skin, you see your hair, you see your car, your furniture, you take care of it because it's in your awareness. But we don't always see the thing that controls everything, which takes care of us, which is our brain. So I want to encourage everybody, if you want to improve your self-esteem overnight, just learn about your brain. It is the most magnificent gift. It's the thing that separates us from, all the other creatures on the planet. Everyone has a superpower. Some animals could fly, some could breathe underwater, some are super strong, some are super fast. Human beings aren't any of those things. But because we have our minds, we can fly. Because of the power of mind, we can breathe underwater. Because of the power of mind, we can go super fast and do extraordinary things. So, so many people, they shrink what's possible to fit their minds. What if we expanded our minds to fit all that's possible?
Yeah. And I think it's a great note to end on that, as we see the flip side in things, we only, as we develop over time and as we learn about our brain also learns about us. Yeah. And we can only do what we believe we can really do. And as we stretch and grow, I think that's one great thing that we're able to take away from your presentation today. So Jim, we appreciate it. I have one bonus question. Yeah. You've been in Utah over the years. What's your favorite part about being in Utah?
So I love this place all year round. I used to come a lot to ski and the snowboard. We came early for Sundance. I do a lot in entertainment, teaching actors how to speed read scripts, memorize their lines. But I also love the warm weather. The hiking here is extraordinary, the air, and definitely the people. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, Jim, I know people can connect with you on social media. Yep. Jim Kwik, Kwik. the KwikBrain podcast. Is there anything else that you'd like people to know where they can connect with?
No, we put a link in our Instagram, if people are on Instagram, for all the free things that they could join us with, to learn how to read faster and remember names and really live your limitless life.
Sounds good. Well, Jim, thank you for coming to Summit. We appreciate you, and we'll let you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Ryan.